Why Zizek? Well, a couple of things. He's not a pacifist, but it's an interesting case. And full disclosure, people, I love Zizek. I mean, I don't know him personally, but I have crossed paths a couple of times. Two of his books really. Sometimes you come across something and it just really opens up your way of seeing something in a profound way that it's just I always have an appreciation for that. And I say that not because I'm a fangirl. I mean, I find his takes on Russia, Ukraine, and Israel, Palestine, even it's to be confused and problematic. And it's not only because especially on the Ukraine, Russia side, he's very much on a different side than I am. It's not that. It's just that his argumentation for it doesn't make sense to me, which to me begs the question, what's going on there? And also, I think he's a good mirror of the left in general, maybe like the post, I don't know, the new left or the post 69 left or whatever. If you can critique someone with their own edifice, that's the sweet spot. Yeah. Especially if you don't straw man them. Yeah. So if you take a serious, a good faith version or framework or critique and apply it to them, that's always a nice trick. A nice trick. It also develops your understanding of their program and the inconsistencies of it, but it also makes them more hard pressed to dismiss, or the people who are on the who tend to be on that side to dismiss what you're saying. You can't always do it, and then you get to say things like he loves to say, maybe this is a case of Zizek not being Zizekian enough. Yeah. When he would say this is when Marx isn't Marx enough or Hegel isn't Hegel enough. And I think what he means by that is that if you take their theory or their critique or whatever it is they're developing, obviously at certain times they're human, they're flawed, they have blind spots. They're gonna act or comment on something that seems to be in contradiction to what we would think of as, when we think of Hegel, what we think of Hegel, when we think of Marx, what we think of Marx, or when we think of Zizek, what we think of him. So that's one reason. And of course, he's prolific. He's always writing. And he also is kind of always on the nice edge of cancellation. There's always people on all the sides who are pissed off at him. He's one of those people that people also kind of love to hate and whatnot. So I'm like, look, I'm fine to critique away, but don't get this wrong. Don't get it twisted. I'm not trying to participate in a cancellation campaign. Not that I had that kind of juice. I mean, I can't, nobody cares if I try to cancel somebody. But anyway,
full disclosure, I have no use for Zizek whatsoever.
Yeah. See, yeah. So that's just the thing. He's not into him. And I got a soft spot for the Z. Anyway, I wrote this article called A Zizekian Critique of Zizek and the Left on Gaza, and using beautiful souls, fetishistic disavowals, and decaf resistance. And in this article, I'm not going to read it out now because that'd be kind of, might be exciting for me, but probably boring for Garrett. But it is on the Morbid Symptoms Substack. I think you had a chance to read it. So is there anything you want to add before we move on?
I liked your article. I thought it was very systematic and very fair. I don't have a deep critique of his philosophy. Philosophy isn't my specialty. I liked your article. I thought it was. I mean, maybe I'll come back to that later if you want to talk about it, but it's not my strong.
No. I think to be fair, we should. This is actually good. I'm glad you brought that up. So we should be. So what we're focusing on, to the extent that Zizek comes up tonight, we're focusing on his political takes. Yeah. And he is a prolific writer, so he writes a lot of op-eds or whatever. He's on a lot of podcasts and whatnot. So we're focusing on his political commentary, I guess we should say, political commentary, not his philosophical tombs on Hegel, where he's trying to basically, as I understand it, apply Lacan to Hegel and then take that Lacanized Hegel and carry it up through what happened since Hegel. And that's why Marx also gets caught. And that's heady stuff, people. Clarity. So the point is, we're not talking about his philosophical work. So please go ahead, Garrett. We don't want people coming at us for that.
Although his mystique is definitely associated with his philosophical work. Although I guess I don't know. I've never putting that to one side. I've never been impressed with his politics. um, aside from his sort of abstract or historical celebration of historical communist figures, his positions, when you actually look at them, seem pretty liberal. the pattern of them, the ones that deviate from U.S. foreign policy have tended to be the ones that were under Republican administrations. The article I sent you before was about his actual political work in Yugoslavia, which is not seems like nothing to be proud of. I could talk more deeply about that.
Yeah, that's fine, but I think that we should record that. Were you around in Yugoslavia at that time period? In Yugoslavia?
No, but I've actually read a good deal.
And do you
about
tend to trust people who say negative things about Zizek because of your position on him?
Do I tend to trust?
No, yeah, because I mean, for
example,
example,
I tend to trust criticisms of him because I have criticism of him.
Yeah. I mean, you're human. We all do that. So I'm just saying there's a whole niche industry in hating Zizek. Yeah. So this guy who wrote the article, he's like, the only thing he writes about is Zizek. If it wasn't for Zizek, the guy wouldn't have a career. So he should get down on his knees and thank him for all his terrible takes.
Yeah, but that's to be expected. That's to be expected considering the massive size of the Zizek industry overall.
I mean, Zizek industry, you think he's a billionaire?
Maybe it doesn't sound like hater talk, but Zizek is the only living intellectual who has an accredited academic journal devoted to his thought.
No, he's not.
Really?
No.
Who else?
Badu.
Badu. Okay. I didn't realize he was still alive.
Yeah, and so basically it's kind of a double-edged sword. If you're not popular, you're not doing enough, and if you get too popular, you're automatically suspect. But this is good. This is good, Garrett. This is fun. Let's put a pin in that Zizek thing with you, but we don't want to get all about him. We want to stay on our topic,
right?
About the left. But let's rain check, because that would be fun. Because I think that you and I could give as good as we get, and we're not going to throw our toys down and run out of the room. Because it's like I'm invested, but I'm not that invested. Yeah.
And I never had a woman who left me for Zizek. Clearly, it's not personal for me.
So let's see. So he thinks that the task of a philosophy is to not provide answers, but to show how the very way we perceive a problem can in itself be part of the problem, which of course is a different. People might say, okay, well, that's a cope, but maybe it is, because one of the things you'll know whenever you go to somebody who, like him or anybody else, after they go through this kind of critique and problematizing all this stuff, someone will get up and be like, okay, well, what do we do? So what's the plan? And they don't want to, and again, in a way, it's good that they don't try to just throw out A, B's, and C's that they haven't thought about, like, oh, let me tell you how to fix Portugal, or let me tell you how to fix Zimbabwe, However, this is quite different from Marx's take that the point of philosophy should be to change things. But when he started writing about this, he was always clear. Talk about Hamas the way Israel talks about Hamas and the condemnation. And it says here, Hamas massacre of Israelis must be condemned. No ifs or buts. Okay, why? Now, of course, it's socially acceptable. That's why people like Piers Morgan were berating people. I think he asked Jeremy Corbyn 48 times in a 20-minute interview if he would condemn Hamas. So it's kind of like this. It's like this obligation. Are you cool or not cool? So you have to condemn them, and then people will, okay, well, you can join the table at least. And this person, again, I don't know. This is from the Jerusalem Post. And they have the byline, and this is also from Zizek. Hamas may lose in Gaza, but it will give birth to such a new wave of anti-Semitism, and not only in the Arab world, Zizek says in his latest interview. And I say to that, well, bummer. Fuck around and find out. Whose fault is it? Your response be to this type of thing. And he wasn't the only one who was saying stuff like this. There were plenty. Still are.
I don't know. It's embarrassing. That's all I can say. I mean, obviously, this is a country, Israel, that's violated international law, on record, you know, as far as the UN is concerned, for 50 years or more. The record. I mean, obviously,
Yeah, officially,
you
yeah.
go back 75 years.
Or 100, yeah.
Yeah, but so to say that there's no but as far as an act of armed resistance by the colonized Palestinians is just, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
And that making it all about Israel and the Jewish people. Of course, Israel is Israelis. They want to make it like they're the country of all the Jewish people, but there's a lot of Jewish people who are like, please keep us out of your project.
He's adopted the Israeli definition of anti-Semitism.
People just swallowed the IDF version of October 7th events whole, and you're like, what are you people like? So you just trust everything the state says now? And the mainstream media, I thought you were critical of them yesterday, but now they're speaking the truth. So I think, like, where everybody, doesn't matter how many books you write, doesn't matter how interesting your Lacanian, Hegelian thing is, you can still be full of shit and really step in it. I think there's something about the safety, because it's not just that the right, quote unquote, sorry to use that binary, the right needs to condemn Hamas. There's a big faction of the left that needs to as well, because if it prevents them from having to deal with the reality, the real, to use the Lacanian term, of Gaza and Palestinians. So if they can, so it helps them to have this kind of, well, yes, there's the occupation, there's just, and that's bad, but Hamas, that's just beyond the pale. So they can still have this good versus this bad good type of thing. Right. And if they don't have that, then they have to confront it and deal with all the crap that comes from confronting it, that comes from saying Zionism needs to go, just basically saying that regime, that system of state has to, it needs to be de-radicalized because they're crazy and murderous. And what would you say about that? Do you think that might be one of the reasons why, even though, to use his term or Lacanian term, there's this fetishistic disavowal, so he knows, or people know, I would say Frawley probably also knows. They know that there wasn't the mass rapes, there wasn't the beheaded and burned babies. Now we also know, or they have to, it's harder for them to pretend not to know, because regular outlets are, how a lot of the people that were killed on October 7th were killed by Israelis. So they know that, but yet do they really believe it? There's this weird thing that goes on, because when they're just talking in real time, or having a conversation, especially in a not very supportive environment, a very pro-Palestinian environment, or an environment that you can't, you always have to condemn armed struggle, they fall back into it. Do you have anything to say about that? Because I found it really odd because I looked into it, so I thought, okay, with this article, I'm going to take like 5 or 6 of his op-eds on this topic. And when I saw that, I was like, what is that? So here you're talking about the information that's come out that we've seen is now clearly propaganda. And then 6 weeks later, you're talking about it as if it's true. I don't know.
I guess he's just chicken shit. And, he doesn't care as much about the values that he claims he cares about. That's the only conclusion I can draw. There's no great social consequences for talking about, revolution and resistance in the abstract. It's only when it has to do with like a current policy.
Yeah. And when it might reflect bad on you or get you disinvited or whatever, canceled or something. Yeah. It's an interesting psychoanalytical or political psychoanalytical question. Is like, what is that about? And he's not the only one on the quote unquote left who does it. Because at this point, even though we know, I mean, unless you're like actively trying not to be informed, because we're not talking about liberals here, we're talking about people who are like on the left and they're like on the online left and they're, this and that, who still don't want to accept or foreground the bullshit that they fell for and then or didn't say anything. It's not just about Zizek the person, but about what his actions and the contradictions in his writing and pronouncements on this say about the left more broadly. Maybe you're right. Maybe it's just because it's chicken shit. It's just easier, and no one's going to expect
Sounds like
them.
the same thing that AOC did.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's it just seems like standard.
It's not. Yeah,
liberal,
it's not like
liberal
in
stuff.
terms of the fraught relationship that the left has when it comes to actual armed struggle. Probably nobody is going to get have a problem is going to get in trouble with at their university job or their media job for playing this kind of both sides kind of for playing the palatable left position, I guess I should say. The suitable for work and suitable for media.
Yeah.
So, betrayal, beautiful souls. I thought about decaf resistance. This idea that they like the idea of resistance, but they want a really pure, non-violent, no resistance that's going to cause them any uncomfortable conversations when they're on the panel. Ask that guy, Sam Cedar, what's his name? The Majority Report. Yeah, perfect victims. So equivocation. Violence is never the answer, which is such a stupid statement. Or terrorists. It's like, yes, of course, sometimes armed struggle is necessary, but terrorists, that's just, it's like, well, it's just so hilarious. Like war and it's as such is terrorism. Apartheid is a political terrorism. Occupation is terrorism. Droning is terrorism. So it's like, what the F are you people talking about? Again, this measuring of two cups just drives me insane. It's like, if you want to say violence isn't the answer, why don't you go march over to Netanyahu and that tribe and tell them that?